Welcome to the podcast Studio Stain, Inspiring Leadership. I learned in my life the importance of being inspired by others and to be surrounded by people who bring you new insights and perspectives. That is the way to grow as a leader and human being in challenging and changing times. In these podcast series, I bring you the latest innovations on personal development and leadership told from business managers, CEOs, spiritual leaders, and people who live their true story. Recording. Hello, I am your host, Stijn Staes, executive coach and absolutely addicted to podcast making. Today, my guest is Byron Katie, and I am very honored today to have her in my show. And let me introduce to those who don't know Katie, but I assume most of you do. Katie, in 1986, when she was 43 years old, she had 3 children and was unhappily married to her second husband. She reportedly suffered from depression, agoraphobia, overeating, and self-medicating with codeine and alcohol. She called her insurance company for help and was referred to Hope House in Los Angeles, a women's counseling center that has since closed. And after 2 weeks of self-reflection in her home, she reportedly experienced an epiphany in her thinking, which created a way for her to challenge and lessen the harmful effects of long-held beliefs. She credited the epiphany, which became known as the work, for a subsequent weight loss and other reductions in bad habits. And in her work, she describes her epiphany as follows. I discovered that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered, but that when I didn't believe them, I didn't suffer, and that this is true for every human being. Freedom is as simple as that. I found that suffering is optional. I found a joy within me that has never disappeared, not for a single moment. And out of this epiphany, she devoted her life to what is called the work. She wrote many international bestsellers. Her workshops and seminars are organized all over the world. And she has been called a true inspirator, a blessing for the world, a life changer by Oprah Winfrey, Eckhart Tolle, Dyer, and is honored by many other influencing figures in the area of personal and spiritual development. In this podcast, you will learn more about changing long-held beliefs, how you can reduce your suffering by 4 simple questions, and how through self-inquiry, you can discover a less-known capacity of your mind and end your suffering. Well, that is quite an intro, I think, Kate, and I'm really honored to have you here. So maybe my first question for you is, it has been a long time since you started to work. Do you recall that moment that was this epiphany? When was it exactly that you had this shining moment of, well, this is it, what I need to do in life, and this is what helps me, and what I can help others with?
So it was a moment on the floor years ago, 1986. And as I lay sleeping on the floor, just fast asleep, some kind of bug, I think a cockroach is what I refer, crawled over my foot. And I came out of that sleep on the floor. And prior to reference, I saw light coming through the window, but it wasn't light until I believed a name onto it. And it wasn't a window until and it wasn't as though I believed a name onto it. The ego named it, and it brought me into the world. And then there were walls, a ceiling, and a floor, and an apparent I. Without attachment, I witnessed it. Was the attempt of defining me, but actually it brought this don't know into the apparent world. I understood the first thing, I'll say my mouth, sometimes I say first thing out of its mouth, But the first thing out of its mouth, out of my mouth, was laughter. It was just
Okay.
like a kind of like a joke had just been just brought me into the world,
Mm.
and I got the joke, and the laughter was the first effect of what I saw. I mean, who would believe onto something? What would believe onto something as though it were real? And then that apparent I, physical,
Mm.
appeared to stand and walk out for no reason, not identified, and yet as object, into a bathroom. And it turned, it looked into a mirror that was on the wall and saw its face. And
Okay.
it looked into those eyes in the mirror,
Mhm.
and it was though an experience that cannot be described happened. The only way I know to speak to it is I fell in love. I fell in love with that. I fell in love.
Mm.
Was ex extraordinary.
Have you experienced it often?
Again,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Did you experience the same kind of love after this in your life?
It has not stopped.
Okay.
There's it has not stopped. What is not to love? And
Mhm.
so people would ask me, what is this? What is this? And it's not to be spoken of. You see, I still stumble in my attempt to meet your
Yeah.
question.
Mm. Did
Uh,
you feel it in your body physically? A change in your body physically as well?
Not
This
yet.
love? Okay.
Yeah, the love, yes, and that was the moment. Yeah,
Mm.
fell in love. And no, there was no body. Um, and that's such a good question, Stein. It's like I was born in that moment as a 43-year-old woman standing there in front of a
Mm.
mirror, as an onlooker might see. But it was, I was witnessing creation.
Mm.
I was witnessing the power of mind, the gift of self, capital S, realization, and the gift of
Mm.
that. And then someone, let's say, said, "Good morning." And it blew me away. They knew
Wow.
here what I know. It's a good morning.
Mm.
I mean, I didn't know what a morning was, but whatever it was good. So they were on to something. So,
Mm.
oh my goodness. And even my daughter would have to hold my hand and say, Mom, we don't do that here. We don't wear a purple sock with a red sock, and we
Mm.
match them up. So people in the world identified me, and so that's
Mm.
who I am. I am who people believe me to be, and I can never be more or less. And that's true for every human being. People are who we believe them to be. And on that floor, that's where the work was born, what I refer to
Mm.
as the work self-inquiry. I could
Mm.
see it was, for example, a window, but it wasn't. Just because I believed it doesn't make it just because it came to me
Mm.
doesn't believe it's so. But the moment we believe it, it is the window. And that's where the laughter came from.
Mm.
So as a non-believer, just witnessing this world in any given moment as we imagine it to be, with our eyes open or closed,
Mm.
there's the world, and it brings awareness.
Mm.
And then the ego names it. And if we don't question it, that becomes our world.
Mm.
And I see this world as a friendly universe. And anything that is believed that would not identify it that way
Mhm.
is what self-inquiry
Mm.
is why I invite people to
It,
self-inquiry, because it's nothing I can give people.
it's beautiful how you share it, because it's like you're reliving it
Mhm.
when you're speaking it out. It is when you tell the story of the love and how it changed your life, it feels like it is happening again now at this very moment.
Yes.
And that is, I feel that energy, and it's extraordinary when you talk about, and I've read it in your books, and then how how you think about the outer world and the inner world inside of you. And when you say it is a beautiful world, and that is something, and I can feel it when you talk about it, when you say you think your life,
Yeah.
is that so what happened with these? You had a long held beliefs about who you were and what happened to you. Were they disappeared in one moment or how did that
Well,
go?
I just woke up to what is real and what is not.
Mm.
And so on the floor, I was seeing what is not. I was being imagined without attachment. I witness what appears to be.
Mm.
That's not. I'm very open to it is. So I speak to it like that's a window, that's a light, that's a car, that's a man, that's a child.
Mm.
There's no harm, no foul.
Mm.
It's naming what is beautiful. Naming what is beautiful.
Mm.
The ego would would call it not. And in its attempt to live as physical, but ego is a state of mind.
Why do you think it is so difficult for people to hold this belief that actually everything is beautiful and love, like you describe it?
Well, I don't
Why
expect
is
people.
that so difficult for people to believe?
Well, they have to test it for themselves, as I see it.
Mm.
And self-inquiry is the test.
Mm.
Like if I say, for example, um, um, oh, let's say we're in the same room and you say, "Oh, I like your window."
Mm.
I can say thank you and appreciate you and appreciate what you
Mm.
see. And to me, it's not, but what I experience in you is appreciation. And if you say, "Oh, that window, oh my gosh, when are you going to take care of it? The paint is peeling and no one washes the window. And what are you thinking?" I can see your world, and that supports me to
Mm.
create a kind of world. I can clean the windows, and I can
Mm.
sand the frame, and I can give the gift of um, giving. It's just not for me,
Mm.
and it's for me.
Yeah.
The world is still in me. There's no one in my world that isn't imagined.
So with the work, you change long-held beliefs with the four questions. Is it true? Um, can you know absolutely that is true? And how do you react? What happens? When do you believe that thought? And what would you do without that thought? Should we, and I've experienced in my own practice how it can change and how it really works and how you
Yeah.
reinvert it. Um, do you think that we need to distinguish beliefs that serve us or that don't serve us? Because it is sometimes,
Start with the ones that don't serve.
yeah,
And then you begin to see out of that practice, you begin to
yeah,
see that, well, not much
yeah,
is true. This is a dream. And I am, by some grace, by
yeah,
some grace, I love this world.
yeah. And
Imagine
if I
autonomy.
may,
It's a privilege. This is Earth
yeah,
School.
how do you know the difference? Because sometimes we might believe that something is serving us, well, actually, it is not serving us. It is just keeping us in our comfort zone. And it is our own thought of the thought that keeps us there. How do we recognize this, how shall shadow or over our own thoughts? How do you do
I
that?
would just invite people to move it from their mind to paper and question it.
Mm,
Yeah, and there's the thought brought into the world rather than imagined, brought into the world on paper, out of our head.
mm,
So it's
mm,
like looking at our own head, our own brain outside of us. And so we can question the thought and
mm.
and this self-inquiry, this questioning
Yes.
is it's an exercise in stillness. It is not something that we can be taught, but how to get still and sit in an open mind. Now that's what it takes, because the I know mind has no time for self-inquiry. It can
Mm.
sit in a thought and say, the window needs to be washed. Is it true? Yes. How do I react when I believe the thought? I think it needs to be washed. I think, and I wonder, and
Mm.
no, self-inquiry is an exercise in stillness. And
Can you
yes,
just, what
we
is
can all
stillness
agree
for
with
you?
that
Yeah.
thinker. And let's take our own minds back and drop into um, the surprise.
Mm. Is that a precondition for doing the work or the self-inquiry is being curious, being surprised, like with the
An
eyes of a
open
child?
mind. I think curiosity, a curious mind is
Mm.
like one way of saying an open mind.
Mm.
I mean, if we're suffering, don't we want to know a truth that would set us free? Well, what I'm thinking and believing is the cause of my suffering. It's the cause of all my tears and anguish and the way I treat people and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would rather question what I'm believing prior to any apparent war I bring into the world, to question it. And I can see cause and that the cause of that, and that's within me. So to end the war in oneself is to give us what all these ancient, I don't know the terms of work, but teachers, these
Mm.
teachers that are so great that we can sit years in stillness, and the ego, they're up against, the second greatest power. And that is a state of mind. And
Mm.
again, we are in our school to to take care of what's left. Because this is, this is, what if you died and you went to the thing people call heaven? You went to heaven. You died and you went to heaven. And the problem with heaven is everything you thought on earth you took with you. So where would you be? We call that hell. What we're thinking and believing sometimes just really feels like hell. And the way we see people and the way we see the world, oh hell. Someone ought to do something about that. Well, we have that power because that world that we see within us, it's what we're thinking and believing about the world, not the world that is the problem. And I invite people not to ever believe me, but self-inquiry is the test.
It is nice what you say, because I work mainly with leaders and managers, and the biggest problem they often have is dealing with people, dealing with others. While we live in the world, we live within a community, we have employees, we have there. So that's the main thing they need to learn, is how to work with people. And what would you say, would you advise when they often say the other one has to change? People management is not for me. It's too difficult. People are too difficult.
Yeah, that difficult. If we take one of those people that are too difficult, and what I'm thinking and believing about them could use a little work, because I am sitting, obviously, in my experience, in the presence of my teacher.
The other one is our teacher.
Am I listening? Am I listening to that person? And that is to give the greatest gift. And that teacher, in the scenario you just offered up, that teacher is that is not a problem. If I see them as a problem, I become a student. If I see them as my problem, then I become the student.
It is
I'm a student here in our school. I'm in.
I love that angle, because it is like the turnaround that you also describe in your book and in your work of, my employee is not my employee. He is my teacher. He is my manager. He is my manager of my personal thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah. And I work for him. It's the other way around, or her. Yeah, so I'm going to fill in a worksheet on that.
Is that where, because you dropped the word ego already a couple of times, is that where the ego comes up and says, no, I am the manager? What is your definition of ego, and where does it fit in within the work?
Oh, the ego is the cause of all suffering. It's the cause of the world. It's the cause of the world. I mean, when we're asleep at night and we're not dreaming, where is the world until the I wakes up? I am. You see how identification is believing? That body that just lay there all night, like a blanket or a pillow or anything. It's like the pillow, and then one I am, paralyzed, fluffy, and immovable. And it's not fair. That body got to get up and walk around, and I'm just stuck here in bed. It's like that. But I am. You see identification.
Yes.
I am late for work. I want coffee. And I invite your viewers or listeners to test that and have fun with it. The ego doesn't sleep. It's a wild child fighting for its existence as body, physical, but that can never be.
So if I would ask, who is Byron Katie?
then I would respond with who you believe her to be. She can never be more or less. So that's why, this self-inquiry is so important. What would I believe about, what would I believe that would, that would move me from my true nature, which is understanding, connection, open-mindedness, grateful, self-aware, what other people are thinking and believing,
Was that a description of yourself?
So say more, ask more, because I lost what I said.
No, it was, if I would ask you, how would you describe Katie Byron?
Okay. Grateful.
And gratefulness.
Gratitude lived.
Yeah. What does it bring you? This gratitude or this gratefulness? What does it bring you? Or what does it bring?
You into my life, the world in a most beautiful way. In my world, you're in me. You are who I believe you, who I imagine you to be, and I'm not the imaginer. Thought happens. And if I see you as anything other than that, I would put what I think and believe about you, or even just think about you, on that, what I refer to as that judge your neighbor worksheet, and I would question it. It gives me opportunity to meditate in the thoughts that I'm believing onto you, that would cause any kind of separation. I could, the way I see you and teachers in the world, and there's no one in the world that is not my teacher. That's such a privilege that I have come in with an open mind like that. And we all have it until we believe. There's nothing to believe as it, object, lay in bed, unidentified. I am. I'm getting up. Oh, I don't feel good today. Oh, or I am getting up. And just looking for trouble. If I believe it is I, this physical body, imagine a world where there would be like an apparent body and and that you think there's something that thinks it's theirs. It has to be this. You can't believe without images. Like words can happen inside of us, but without the images, they don't make sense. They have to identify as object. And that is just allowing everyone to have the experience that I experienced on the floor. It puts us all on the floor, wherever we are, driving a car, taking a flight, on our morning walks or our evening walks, raising our children, going to work, doing a good job. Again, just imagine you're in heaven. The only problem in heaven is what you're thinking and believing about heaven. So it's we're not waking up here. We're going to sleep here and waking up again, like just unfinished business. That's what this
is. This because you mentioned the separation, when you let the ego take over of your life or your opinion or your thoughts?
You know,
Is
I
that
don't let
when
it. I don't,
separation happens?
and I don't let it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
and it's I am right. You are wrong. And you think the same. I. So ask the question again, having said that.
About the separation, when the ego starts doing this, you are right and I am
Well,
right and you are wrong.
separation. Then there's a you and a me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just too many actually. But we could say in this experience, it's in the experiences we in Earth, it's just you. And like
Mm,
imagine now biting into a big, ripe, juicy lemon.
mm.
Think,
That's a good taste. That's a good
think,
taste.
feel, act, have. That was not a
Mm,
lemon. And you experience the physical effects.
mm.
So that's the experience on the floor. We have to believe it to see it and experience it.
Is that where life starts with our thoughts?
Yes.
Mm,
And people can test it as they're in the mornings when they wake up. The ego doesn't sleep as it's walking to the bathroom.
mm,
I need to pee. I need to brush my teeth. I want coffee. And so we're just traveling around as it seems, but going nowhere.
mm,
And then the ego does a thing we called remembering that would give us a sense of security in the dream. So what happens in this Judge Your Neighbor worksheet as we move our mind to paper,
mhm,
then question it, it wakes us up to the ego. And the ego does not sleep from the moment the mind wakes up all the way. Imagine walking from your bedroom to the kitchen. It's that
mm,
ego it is just living its life, and it cannot sleep.
mm.
If it sleeps, then self-realization just
Have
and
you?
so that's
Mm,
what these four questions are about.
mm,
Question the thoughts that we're thinking and believing that would
mm,
cause suffering in the world. And
mm,
in that, we not only end our suffering, we're waking up to
mm,
reality with again, a capital
mm.
R.
What was for you? Because I I can imagine that after you had your epiphany, there were other moments in life that you really had difficult thoughts or thoughts that were not supporting you. Was it easier for you to change them, or have you been, did you need to do it your whole life long, or was it, or how did you
Doesn't
deal with your
it doesn't
difficulties in life?
it doesn't stop. It's like an
Mm,
implant. To come into life as the apparent an apparent 43-year-old. That's how the world see it, and it's how I
yeah.
speak to it. But I'm an infant, and people said it's a tree, and I looked around, and people going, "Oh, it's beautiful." Let's say if you're a child and you don't, just learning to talk, and someone says it's a tree, you go goo goo gaga, and someone says it's a tree, and your attention goes somewhere else. And then there's
Mm,
this moment they say, "Look, honey, look at the tree." And then in that moment, you believe. And in that moment is you've seen your first tree, even though you've been living
mm,
in a forest for maybe 2 or 3 years.
mm.
And then it continues because the ego's born the moment we believe.
Yeah.
Just like the experience on the floor, only I was self-aware enough. I found it hilarious because just because I believe it doesn't mean it's so.
Would you say that there is still an ego inside of you?
I hope so. You know, I don't do war with the ego. I see it as a terrified child that wants to exist as a physical object.
Mm,
And oh, it's tender. It's like, oh, it's a tree. It's a tree. I know it's a tree. It's, oh, honey, 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 honey.
mm,
Sure. You know, it just go, You do war with the ego, it's tree. No, it's not. Tree. I mean, it's hopeless.
yeah.
You know, it's a tree, that's that. And hopeless meaning once we believe we're in that trance. And that's
Mm,
not right or wrong. It's just not so. And I invite people not ever to believe me, but to test it for themselves. And
yeah.
if there are words here that are supportive in some way, then good on that.
Is it in a way like growing up, becoming friends with your inner child again? Or how would you
Well,
experience it?
on on yeah, yeah, the ego as the inner child, but even the physical body's imagined.
Mm,
But that's a stepping stone, what
meaning?
you mentioned.
Okay. In what way? Thank you.
Well, it's a physical body's imagined. You can't see the
Mm,
body now. It's either past or future. It's an illusion.
mm,
How would I know this is my body now if I couldn't see it in the past?
mm,
I'm a newborn, if I'm born at all.
mm.
But this joy, this joy, this privilege, this privilege to sit in your smile. Oh, who would miss it? Or to sit in someone's sadness, who would miss it? You know, sadness, you know, it's to be in the presence. Let's say if someone's sad, you're
Mhm.
just sitting in the presence of a believer.
Mm,
And if it's appropriate, you know, to hold them and rock them. I don't try to wake people up.
mm.
I'm here by invitation.
Finding beauty in sadness.
I'm for both. They're both an effective mind. But
Mm,
beauty matches our true nature.
yeah.
So that's what it's not the tree itself.
Mm,
It's as we experience it to be, and then it's named, and we can recall that, and then we can recall the apparent pain and suffering, and what we're thinking and believing in that situation. People have opportunity to question,
yeah.
it, not to get rid of it, but to sit in the answer, which to the question that brings understanding. And that's the
How,
power.
how come you think we have been taken away so far from our true nature of
We
this?
haven't,
We haven't?
no, the ego's an illusion. It's got our attention.
Mm,
No, that immovable, the ego can't touch that. And every time we sit in self-inquiry, that's what we're dropping into, the immovable.
mm.
And
And
there we find our answers. And it leaves us in the world, in this, what I refer to as Earth School.
sorry?
It leaves us in this world I call Earth School.
Mm.
To see, you know, just to witness unfinished business and and what we refer to as suffering lets us know, whoop, we're not quite done yet.
Is there any suffering actually, or is that just the ego subscribe describing something to feel pain?
The order of creation, what I share with people, I call it the order of creation, is think, feel, act, have. And it's so what I invite is think, because you can't stop it.
No.
Feel. And if it disconnects you from, here's the short version, if you see any problem whatsoever, anything less than beautiful, then I would question it.
Yeah.
I would question what I believe in, what I'm thinking.
When you look back on all these years, because you have been traveling the world, giving so many seminars and so much inspiration to people about the work.
Self-inquiry, the word.
The self-inquiry. What would you say was the most revealing moment for you?
When I was shown the cause of life and that suffering can be understood here. Ask the question again.
In all these years that you have been working with people and all over the world, traveling and seeing so much change in people and the suffering, what was the most impressive is maybe not the right word, but the most astonishing moment for you, or witnessing it is really true, but the practice and the teachings, and are there many moments that you witnessed of, wow, this is really how it works? And what was that maybe one moment that you can share with us?
I don't understand the question.
If there is, in all these years that you traveled and worked with people, if there are moments that you remember as, wow, this is something even I did not expect that could be changed in a person or within me, and that did actually change.
No. And a lot that did change. Yeah, people all over the world now are sitting in self-inquiry, waking up to what is beautiful, the gift given, this earth school that gives us opportunity to realize who and what we really are, and without limitation, all of it. That even a tree is either remembered or anticipated. It can never be.
What is there still ahead of you, Katie?
Oh my goodness, don't know.
What do you want there to be?
How could something be ahead of me? That's just, I want to be present to it. I don't want to be in that apparent situation and when this one's the same. In other words, life is as we believe it to be. And that's a beautiful thing. But when we're not getting what we want, or we're in fear of not wanting what we have, like it's not enough, then that's what self-inquiry is about. It wakes us up to a kind of balance that leaves us grateful.
Do you still have expectations, or have you stopped expecting?
That's a good one. My husband Stephen, I expect him to wake up in the morning and come into the kitchen where I am, for example,
Mm.
And he does or he doesn't. So life gives me everything I want and need. And so I live it as a surprise.
Mm. You change an expectation into a surprise.
Oh, well, oh my goodness. That's the gift. It's like, oh my gosh, he didn't come into the kitchen. And then you see what is in the place that I would not see had he actually come into the kitchen.
Mm.
And if he comes into the kitchen, oh my gosh, there he is. He's real, I think I imagine.
You could
And
even change and say, well, he doesn't come into the kitchen. I'm going to look for him. Maybe he is in the bathroom.
yeah, and then be shocked that he even exists, and the
Absolutely.
privilege of that.
It feels like you live the life every second, Katie. That's how I perceive it.
Other than what we're thinking and believing, we all do.
Mm.
We all do. And it's still, I call that the last story. But to love this world, that's to love this world is to love it. To love this world, imagined or not, whatever there is of it.
I think that's a really beautiful one to end the podcast.
Ah,
Love the world, even if you imagine it. What would you say, Katie?
yeah. I would say, and in case you don't see it that way,
Mm-hmm.
identify what you're thinking and believing about the world.
Yeah.
And question it. I would say, do I have 4 questions and some turnarounds for you? And I don't expect people to sit in those questions, meditate in those questions, or fill in that worksheet of what they're thinking and believing to question it. But it certainly is out there in the world, and it's, by
Yeah.
invitation, everyone welcome.
Can I can I share my appreciation and gratitude for all the work that you have been doing and the beautiful insights that you have brought into the world with your work, Katie? It is really, I think everybody should read your books and just test it for themselves if it works or not for them to do the self-inquiry.
That's where the power is.
Mm.
That's where the power is. Self-inquiry. Yeah, teachers can point,
Mm.
but that's about it. I'm busy doing my own work.
Do you still travel, Katie?
Just, it's a no for now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my 80s, and I just, Stein, I have this little Center for the Work in Ojai, in California. And I've been doing events there, and I love it so much. And there's no need to my mind to travel in this age when we have like the internet and all. It's just like the two of us sitting together, as we sit in apparent different countries, moves us together now. And this is not a country. We don't. So traveling is in using all the jet fuel and in my 80s, this body is a privilege, and it's I can do it from here and reach someone as lovely as you in the world. As you affect so many people, it leaves me as obsolete. Now, if that's not a beautiful world, I don't know what is.
Thank you for sharing this time with me and with the listeners. And I'm sure that gave them a lot of inspiration. And if they want, they can go to your website or buy your books or to get more inspiration. So leaves me just to wish you well in California. And who knows, one day I might come there.
Oh my. Well,
who knows? I have some good friends in California.
Yeah,
so, that's another reason to go there. And I also would like to say thank you to the maybe one last question. If there was one sentence that you would say to the listeners in Belgium, what would it be?
Love is the power.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I would add, definition of love for me is understanding.
Understanding is the power. Thank you very much, Katie Byron, for this inspiring and really fascinating, magical conversation. And also thank you to the dear listeners. I hope this conversation has been able to inspire you, because that is my mission. After all, personal development and growth are key elements in a changing world. If you want to listen to more podcasts, then be sure to press the follow button and you will be informed immediately. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to Studio Steen. If you want more inspiration, just go to my website studiosteen.com or go to the Spotify website, iTunes on inspirational leadership. You can also share this podcast with others who might benefit from listening to these inspirational talks. Thank you very much, great people.